All right, let's get started. So, welcome to the December 2025 Koyfin webinar. We're doing these webinars every month or so and haven't done one in a while. So, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll try to do these going forward a little bit more frequently. On today's agenda, just wanted to cover a couple of things in terms of setting your expectations. So, number one, some housekeeping items. Number two, we'll do a quick survey. Number three, we'll go through the webinar. That'll be a demo of where I'm going to go through the functionality of Koyfin and some of the features that we've rolled out over the past 6 to 12 months relating to client portfolios, integrations, PDF uploads, creating proposals, and talk about some upcoming releases that have to do with daily sync of integrations, our newest integrations with Fidelity and Adapar, and then our upcoming workflow that we're going to be working on, which is risk scoring and the questionnaire. If anyone here is interested in being a beta user or helping us be a design partner for the risk scoring and questionnaire, please reach out to me or the help desk. My email is rob@koyfin.com. And then finally, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end to answer any questions. So I have my screen of Koyfin up. Today, I'm going to be demoing specific functionality related to client portfolios and client proposals. I did want to kind of, for folks that are learning about Koyfin for the first time, give you just a quick 2-minute overview of what Koyfin is. So Koyfin is a analytics and financial data platform, and basically we have a couple of workflows that we do really well. Number one is research. So researching stocks, ETFs, mutual funds, or macro data. Number two is portfolio analytics. So really building model portfolios and understanding your client portfolios. And number three is really client engagement. And that has to do with creating either quarterly reports for your existing users or creating proposals for your prospects that basically walking them through what their existing portfolio looks like, what the ideal portfolio you want them to be in, and kind of walking them through the differences. So that's those are kind of the key workflows. In terms of research, wanted to just highlight the security analysis tab on the bottom left here. We have a ton of data on single stocks. I know a lot of advisors don't do single stocks or don't focus on single stocks, but if you do have single stocks in your portfolio that you just have to answer questions about valuation or earnings growth, or even Wall Street estimates and price targets, we have all that data for stocks, which you can look at in terms of tables, or you can visualize information really easily, whether it has to do with fundamentals or valuations or revenue growth. So having all that wealth of equity data at your fingertips is right here. The other thing is looking at ETF data. So I'm just going to look at VU over here. Again, a lot of high quality information powered by Morningstar for ETFs. So overview, description, percentile rank in terms of scoring each one of these metrics of how it scores versus other funds in the fund universe or other funds in the category specific to the equity, to the ETF that you're looking up. So basically giving you a percentile rank. And again, really looking at being able to visualize, for example, performance over different periods of time and having this be very interactive. And then last thing, for mutual funds, having that sort of data as well. So having all that mutual fund information. You can access that via the snapshot. So if you type in a ticker here, you can access all that information via the ticker. You can also access that information via watch list. So if you wanted to build a watch list of stocks, ETFs, or mutual funds, you could do that as well as our screening tool. So our screening tool helps you find any sort of dimension that you're looking for, whether it's performance or valuation or fees, and you could screen for different instruments that way as well. So that's a really high level overview of the research. The second thing is model portfolio. So model portfolios allow you to manage and build allocation portfolios or model portfolios. So for example, these are all my model portfolios here that I could then drill into and see all the different exposures or returns or whatever it is. These model portfolios are dynamic, so that you can be able to rebalance them over time, so that if I have a rebalance here, for example, my initial allocation, I could rebalance these in, let's say, 2017 and have a slightly different allocation where this period is the starting period and then this is the rebalance period. So these portfolios are able to be dynamic and rebalanced over time. Um, and then the last thing, which is going to be the focus of this webinar, is going to be the client portfolios and the ability to create proposals. So whereas model portfolios are allocation based, putting in kind of percentages in here. That's what a model portfolio is kind of percentage based allocations that you rebalance. Client portfolios are position focused portfolios. So they're portfolios made up of actual quantities of positions with dollar amounts. And the way that our client portfolios work is that you have three layers or three levels that we think about. So on the very bottom layer is the account. So for example, Bobby Jones IRA and the 529, those are both accounts. That rolls up into a portfolio. So here, my Bobby Jones portfolio has these two accounts. My Sue Jones portfolio has these two accounts. And then the portfolios roll up into households. So my Jones family here is my household, which contains the two portfolios, which contain the four accounts. So that three-level structure is how we think about our portfolio construction. And once you have the structure, you can click into any of these kind of items. So for example, if I wanted to click into the Jones family, I would be here in the Jones family. I would then have my analytics for the Jones family. So for example, I would have my P&L statement with all the positions here, my quantity, my weight, my average cost, and be able to see how they're tracking. This data does update live intraday. I know a lot of the custodial platforms don't update live. So that's really a big benefit of what you can see here in terms of being able to see the actual intraday exposure, especially when markets are moving like crazy. The other kind of tab, the next tab to look at is the exposure tab. So this exposure tab really allows you to see what you own in the portfolio. So we slice and dice that by what type of securities you own. So this kind of just gives you the security breakdown. You can then look at the instrument type. So here I'm owning mostly ETFs and some equity and mutual funds. You can also look at the asset allocation. So this is my asset allocation. By the way, all of these exhibits you can look at either versus the benchmark or by itself. So versus the benchmark is a benchmark that you assign in this edit portfolio. So here my benchmark is 60/40, but you could also have a benchmark that's an ETF or a custom benchmark that you create. Going forward with some of these analytics, we have our equity sectors. So where are you overweight and underweight equity sectors? The style boxes. So for example, just do no benchmark here. This is my style box for the portfolio for the equity side. This is my style box for the fixed income side. Where am I exposed on the regions, or where am I overweight on the regions? Here I'm overweight US and a little bit of Asia. The country exposure, and then getting into some fixed income exposures, so seeing what fixed income allocations look like on a sector level, on a credit quality level, and on a maturity level. So really able to slice and dice the different positions. You're then able to look at the hypothetical performance. So hypothetical performance here is the current portfolio. So the current shares held of how it performed historically. The benefit there is you're able to kind of say, hey, I'm able to then understand how the current portfolio behaves in different sell-offs or in different parts of the market. So that's kind of one way that you would use the hypothetical performance. You could also then be able to understand some of the underlying positions here. So these are kind of like what I own. And then you're able to kind of select the columns that these are analyzed by. So for example, I could look at the performance of all these instruments, or I could look at the margins or valuation where it's relevant. So really looking at the underlying portfolio holdings and what the different metrics are. I can also look at the risk, so all the different risk metrics that you can think of. So quantitatively, how does this portfolio compare versus a 60/40 portfolio, which is my benchmark? What are the drawdowns like for this portfolio? So this is looking at all the drawdowns and how severe they were. And then looking at some of the stress tests. So looking at kind of like the different sell-offs in the market over the years and how did this portfolio do during that market sell-off. The other tabs here And then related to that is the drawdown chart. So being able to see the drawdown versus the benchmark is another kind of risk tab that's pretty interesting and very widely used. Looking at the holdings matrix, this basically looks through any sort of fund to tell you what is the biggest exposure that you have. So for example, here, my biggest exposure is Tesla. There's a direct exposure, and then some of the funds I own have an indirect exposure. And then my second biggest exposure is NVIDIA. So I could kind of see quickly if a client asks, what is my exposure to this stock or this kind of theme, you could quickly see that underlying exposure in this holdings matrix analysis. The scatter plot is another kind of tool to use. So this again looks at the portfolio, looks at the holdings, and looks where it is on different metrics, which you could choose the X and Y metrics here. And then the rebalance tab is something that we've introduced recently. This basically allows you to compare what the portfolio looks like versus the benchmark and where the different rebalance quantities would need to happen. So again, my benchmark is a 60-40 portfolio. So 60% allocated to the Vanguard S&P 500 fund, 40% allocated to the American Bond Fund. And if I wanted to rebalance this portfolio into the benchmark, I would have to kind of buy 60% of this and 40% of this and then sell my underlying holdings. So in this example, this portfolio, the benchmark probably isn't directly comparable to it. And so that's why we'd have to rebalance the entire portfolio. But to the extent that you're using a model portfolio or you're using some kind of benchmark and you want to see around the edges, what do you need to rebalance? That gives you the quantities and the market value to rebalance all those different things. And so again, I'm on the Jones family, so this is the household analysis, but you would get a very similar analysis if you wanted to, let's say, look at the Sue Jones portfolio, which remember are these two underlying accounts. You'd be able to see all this different analytics on the Sue Jones portfolio and be able to kind of like toggle which portfolio or which account you're looking at. So a lot of flexibility in terms of going into either a very high level on the household level or into the account level and go into a little bit more details. Now that we have these kind of client portfolios, or you saw how to create these client portfolios, I wanted to just spend a second in terms of talking about how to populate these. So to create a client portfolio, you would kind of go to add new, you would click create portfolio. And so there's three ways to add a portfolio. You can manually input it. You could upload a CSV. Four ways. You can upload a PDF. So if you have a PDF brokerage statement, you can use this tool here, upload the PDF, and we'll create a portfolio for you. So if the PDF has 5 accounts, we will take those 5 accounts, create them inside a portfolio. If the PDF has 1 account, then it'll be 1 account inside a portfolio. So really useful tool if you're kind of dealing with new prospects or existing clients that are giving you PDFs and creating portfolios from that. And then the last way to kind of get portfolios in here is through the integrations page. So we do have a bunch of integrations here. I'll show you what they are. We have Schwab, Altruist, Black Diamond, Trade PMR, IBKR, Orion. Adapar is not live. It's going live next week. And then Fidelity is going live pretty shortly also. So once you connect to one of these integrations, you'll be able to kind of pull your client data into client portfolios. Another major improvement that we're making is today, when you have the integration, you would have to manually select which accounts you're importing. We're starting to roll out new functionality, which we call Daily Sync, where once you have an integration set up in Koyfin, it'll automatically pull in those accounts every night and update those accounts every night. So if I have my Schwab integrated, it'll pull in all my Schwab accounts every night. And if you organize those accounts into households or portfolios, that structure will preserve and it'll save, and the account level data will update every night. If you do want to be a beta tester for the Daily Sync, if you're a user of that and want to be a beta tester, please reach out to me or on our help desk. Again, rob@koyfin.com or help@koyfin.com, and we can get you set up for a beta test. Remember, beta testers means we're still kind of working out some of the little kinks. So be prepared to kind of provide some feedback and maybe have some things that are slow or maybe that aren't exactly working, but we've had some clients that are beta testing the stuff and are pretty happy. So it would be great to get some folks who are interested in being early users of this kind of sync functionality. Um, One of the other kind of like things I wanted to cover is once you do have these client portfolios, the ability to create reports. So really kind of two use cases for reports. One is if you're doing a client meeting or a catch up. So the ability to kind of create a report from these client portfolios. I showed you how to do that. So again, when I'm in a portfolio, in a client portfolio, I click create report. I go to get started from scratch. I'm just going to compare this portfolio. I'm going to say Jones family as named, and I'm going to compare that versus the 60/40 benchmark that we looked at before. And that's going to be my benchmark. I'm going to click next. I'm going to upload a logo here of, let's say I work at Fidelity, just kind of chose a big company here. So let's say I'm an advisor at Fidelity here. And so now this report is a Fidelity branded report. Fidelity color is not blue, it's actually green. So I'm going to just change that to be that to match kind of Fidelity's. I don't know exactly what their hex is, but let me see if I can get a close up. That was good. So now my report is going to be a little bit nicer. It's going to be kind of matching the brand colors a little bit more. And then when I go to the underlying pages, these are all the different underlying pages in my report. And when I go to these pages, I can kind of see what's on this page. A lot of times on these pages, you could edit the pages. So you can, for example, customize. Let's say I didn't want to show performance, like performances might be a compliance issue for some folks. I would uncheck that. And now my report only has the fees and income. And so that's a pretty useful way of customizing the report. Let's say I didn't want to have this summary page because that's not important to maybe my client in terms of my communication to that client. I would just use this kind of icon here and that would hide the page. And so this page now would disappear from the report and I would sort of go to the next page and figure out what is the story and what is the what are the issues that I want to walk through with the client. All these tabs here reflect the analytics I showed you before. I'll quickly run through it. So top holdings and sort of allocation, this asset allocation summary of where you are for kind of the portfolio versus the benchmark, that holdings matrix look through of what I actually own in terms of the positions, my equity exposure with style boxes and sector and region exposure, my fixed income exposure with the sort of style boxes in the sectors, two performance charts, so performance on different time frames, performance over a different time frame, over kind of a line chart over the lifetime, the risk of the drawdown and the stress test, the fee comparison table. I'll go through that when I go through proposals. The quant metrics of kind of those portfolio statistics, the holdings table. So this is a kind of like all the holdings and the ability for you to choose which columns are displayed here. So this is a new exhibit that we've recently put in. Before we used to have a top holdings table. Now we have a full holdings table. So if you have 50 positions in your portfolio, you're able to then create a report that includes all these positions. So these would all show up for the portfolio and the benchmark. If you didn't want this level of detail, again, you could just hide that. And then the rest of the report is some cash sensitivity exhibit, a fee sensitivity exhibit, and disclosures, which are editable. So that's the report. Once you're ready to create that, you would hit create report. It would create the PDF and save it to your hard drive, and then you can access it that way. And so a lot of advisors use this kind of report for, again, for client meetings or client catch-ups, or maybe in portfolio review meetings, whether it's a client portfolio or model portfolio. The other kind of big use case that I wanted to cover is client proposals. So client proposal, typically you're speaking to a prospect, they have a portfolio today, you're trying to talk to them about, their existing portfolio, what are the potential issues in their existing portfolio, whether it's not allocated to the proper assets, whether there's way too many high fee funds, whether there's just too much crap in there that's very tightly correlated. Whatever the diagnosis that you have for a portfolio that's poorly managed, Koyfin gives you the tools to kind of show the client why it's poorly managed or quantitatively explain why it's poorly managed. So the way an advisor, again, would do that is they would a lot of times upload a PDF of the existing portfolio, or they could upload a CSV, and then they would compare it to a model portfolio. So model portfolio would be something that they then recommend that's maybe more appropriate on a risk basis or more appropriate based on kind of lower fund fees. And you could create a similar report with kind of comparing the model portfolio versus the client portfolio or the prospect. So what I would do here is my primary portfolio would then become the model portfolio. So let's say there's a growth portfolio, which I think is appropriate for the client. And let's say the client today is the Jones family. And so my proposed portfolio is going to be the growth portfolio. My current portfolio is going to be the Jones family portfolio. Again, I would kind of upload my Fidelity logo here, and then I would have the report and kind of again walking the client of this is where you are today in your current portfolio. This is the proposed portfolio, and here are the different improvements that happen based on these different quant metrics. So, for example, fees are important, and fees are improved. Sharp ratios improved. Performance is improved. And again, this is totally customizable. So having that ability to kind of compare the portfolio side by side is really important. The other thing that we've created that's really cool is the ability to then add not only the portfolio comparison, but there's a button here called Add Custom Pages. And what this allows you to do is create branding about your firm and create different market commentary about different themes that are going on. So, for example, we have the ability to put in team pages or maybe some things about your firm. We also have the ability to add macro graphs. So if you wanted to add a graph of, let's say, GDP or oil or inflation, you could do that in here. And instead of creating a proposal with those things, I'm just going to show you what the end product looks like, so you have a sense of kind of the finished product. Always a little bit better. So I'm going to just share my PDF here. So this is a report that I created, again, with RK, Rob Koyfin Wealth Management. So if I ever start a FA firm, that's going to be the brand. Please don't steal it. And so RK Wealth Management, again, this proposal is broken down into three parts. About the firm is number one, about the market and views on the market is number two, and number three is that portfolio comparison. And so with those pages that I showed you, you're able to kind of create a page about our advisory team. So we, hired some Koyfiners to RK Wealth Management, hired Connor and Tatiana to be the product manager and managing director. We also have a research team here that fully supports all the allocation decisions and recommendations that we do, which you could see here. We also have some information about our company, when it was founded, what we believe in, some information about our services, so what we provide in terms of investment management or tax planning, and then maybe a page about our values. So really kind of exposing potential prospects to the brand, to the values of your firm, and kind of what you believe in. The second part is that market commentary. So, depends on the advisor, but some advisors stay away from market commentary. Others love to talk a little bit about the market, but you could put different kind of charts in here. So, for example, this is a chart about what's happening in international stocks or year-to-date sector rotation or market turbulence or 10-year treasury yields or the economy or GDP. So this kind of goes through some macro trends that you might want to walk a client through to maybe explain why you have a certain stance in terms of tactically or maybe how you view the economy and what's going on. As you know, prospects and clients appreciate that kind of opinion or sometimes appreciate that view of the market. Or you could have something more long-term, like an asset quote, to talk about different rotations that happen throughout the several years in terms of asset classes and how they perform. And then this kind of chart is always handy in terms of market sells off all the time. Here's all the times that it has sold off more than 5%. and here's why it sold off, and just to kind of put that into context over the past 30 years of why sell-offs happen. So that would be kind of like maybe an expanded version of a market commentary. And then it would go into the portfolio comparison tool where we would kind of go through to that portfolio comparison in terms of the overview page, and then going through some of those pages where we talk about the style boxes, the sector exposures, the performance, the risk, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff here in this presentation. Advisors are unique in their own style and how they like to present data. I think it also probably depends a lot on the client, whether the client is, maybe more involved in the market or wants to hear more about the details. Some clients want to hear very little, and you may want to just focus on asset allocation about your firm. So our reporting tool, our proposal tool gives you that flexibility to really customize and tailor that proposal to the story you want to tell. Um, so that's kind of like what I wanted to cover from the webinar. It's a, kind of a key feature that we've released recently that's gotten a ton of usage. Um, I Let's see what time. Yeah, I'm gonna jump over here to answer any questions, and we can maybe do if anyone has specific demo functionality questions, happy to answer those as we're doing the Q&A. So let's see here. Hopefully Gabe has been answering some of these questions. So Charles asks, will Koyfin effectively compete with Nitrogen Wealth? Charles, thank you for that question. I think Nitrogen, formerly known as Riskalyze, is one of the dominant players in risk scoring and risk metrics. I think they have a lot of interesting things they do. And so we are definitely going to have a lot of overlap with what Nitrogen does. I don't think we're going to do everything that Nitrogen does, and Nitrogen is not going to do everything we do, but we definitely want to take some of that risk scoring workflows and really put them onto Koyfin so that users don't have to switch platforms and can do everything in one place. And that's something that we've heard from a lot of advisors is I want to use fewer tools, not more tools. And so we're trying to figure out which workflows to centralize onto Koyfin. And this risk scoring workflow seems like a very popular one that's heavily demanded and very related to kind of what we do with portfolio analytics and risk scoring. So the answer to your question is yes, we will effectively replace and aim to replace some of the workflows that are provided by Nitrogen. Brandon asks, will transactions ever be a feature within portfolio tools? Example, enter a sales trim made on an individual stock. I think that's a good question. So basically, will historical transactions be a part of Koyfin? The answer is yes. I'm not sure of the timing of that. So maybe in the future, we'll have a little bit more of a robust kind of portfolio management system analytics where you can have transactions and you can kind of manage a portfolio more like the real world. Today, it's only based on the current holdings, but I think in the future we'll definitely get there. I don't have a timeline for that. Casey, just gonna mark these as answered. Casey Patrick wants to know, is there a feature to find the most highly correlated investments to a particular investment? As an example, if we're looking for the most highly correlated investment to Johnson & Johnson stock, is there a search that would provide alternative options for stock funds or ETFs? Casey, thank you for that question. That's a really good idea. We don't have anything today that would kind of optimize that correlation analysis. It's something we've definitely asked about before, and it's on our roadmap. It's not prioritized to be delivered in the next couple of months, but definitely something that we hope to release hopefully in 2026. Sunny wants to know, hello, Fidelity integration means NFS as well, which is basically institutional side of Fidelity. So Sunny, thank you for that clarification. When I say Fidelity, that does mean NFS. It does not mean the retail part of Fidelity. So we are integrating with Netscape or Wealthscape. Netscape is an internet company. And so you'll be able to kind of pull the custody positions from the institutional side of Fidelity. If you're interested in being a beta user for the Fidelity integration, let us know. We'll set you up, and you'll be able to kind of give us feedback, and you'll have early access. Um, in the integration downloads, is the historical performance figure based on actual account performance or based on the current holdings performance? Eric, thank you for that question. In the client portfolios, the performance is based on the current holdings. So we don't have the concept of rebalancing or transactions in Koyfin today. Everything is based on the current holdings. So think of that as the hypothetical performance of the holdings rather than the actually what happened. So let's say the portfolio, let's say an account had $1 million in cash and yesterday bought a portfolio of stocks and bonds and ETFs. We would show you what that portfolio would have done over the past year or 5 years, and you could see kind of how that portfolio would have performed during maybe the COVID sell-off or the COVID rebound. So that's how you would use that tool today, but you wouldn't be able to kind of look at the actual performance, which is very little, which is a one-day performance of, hey, I just bought these holdings yesterday. Jay asks, can you compare, contrast with Quanti? Also, Jay, thanks for that question. So, Quanti is definitely a robust tool that's been around for a while. I'd say the biggest things we hear in terms of kind of why users switch from Quanti to Koyfin are one, the analytics and the graphing, so just much more robust data visualization. Two is the data coverage. So Quanti basically sits on Morningstar data. And so it doesn't have any sort of fundamentals for stocks. It doesn't have anything like ETF valuations. Doesn't have any sort of macro data. Doesn't have any international data. So there's just much more robust coverage. And then I think, just in general, as a matter of taste, Quanti has kind of one brand that was developed about 30 years ago. I'd say Koyfin is a much more modern brand that was developed over the past, 5, 8 years. And so I think that reflects both in the user interface and in the reports that you're going to be presenting to clients and what they look like. So I'd say those are the major differences, but there's definitely a lot of overlap in workflows. When users switch over to Quanti, they're sort of used to doing all those workflows, and it's pretty easy to kind of get set up. Simon wants to know, can you incorporate private investment alternatives into proposal reports? So Simon, when you have private investments or alternatives, so let's say you have a PDF and the PDF has some maybe private funds, those get incorporated into Koyfin. So we do ingest private funds or alternatives, and you're able to see those in the actual portfolio table. You're also able to see those in the asset allocation table. Um, that also happens when you're importing from a custodian. So if you're importing from a custodian and there's some private funds or credit, we do import those. We do show that in the asset allocation, but we don't have any of the underlying data. So you wouldn't be able to click on the private fund and be able to see the performance or fees or anything like that. But we do have the fund as a line item and the asset allocation. So the answer to your question is we do incorporate it, but we don't have any reference data to then let you go deeper into that private fund. Jason wants to know, are all these functionalities, namely portfolio analytics tool, for all paying customers of Koyfin or any of the top tiers? So Jason, most of the functionality that we covered today is in the Advisor Pro package. So the Advisor Pro package is 3,500 hours per year. If you don't need the ability to create custom reports or to integrate with some of the PMS systems like Adapar or Black Diamond, then you can think about the Advisor Core tier, which is about $2,000 per year. So those are the two advisor focused tiers that we have today. Jacob asks, is there an advisor integration? We have some custom model portfolios we maintain there. So Jacob, we are trying to integrate with Advizon. From my understanding, we're on some waiting list. To the extent that you can contact your Advizon rep and ask and say, like, hey, we would love to see a Koyfin integration. That would help us bump up and upvote us in the queue. So if there's any Advizon users here, and you'd be kind enough to email your advisor on rep and say, I want an integration with Koyfin to be able to look at kind of deeper portfolio analytics. That would help our kind of standing in the queue. Jirish asks, do you offer a view of upside downside ratios? So we do have upside downside capture ratios in the risk tab. So we have that for model portfolios and client portfolios. So you can see them there. Marco asks, is there an ETA as to when you have holdings data for Canadian mutual funds and ETFs? Marco, I know this is something you've asked about before, so appreciate you following up on that. I I think we can have Canadian ETFs at probably at some point next year. Canadian mutual funds are going to be really hard for us to get just because our data provider for some reason is not able to license those to us, Morningstar. But Canadian ETF holdings we'll try and get at some point in 2026. Maverick asks, hey Maverick, on charting and model portfolios, are bear market periods and charts and development also similar kind of to recession shading? Maverick, that's something that we definitely want to deliver, hopefully in the first quarter. I know it's something that you've asked us before and a lot of other users. So the ability to click a button, see the recessions or bear markets on the graphs is something that we're definitely going to work on soon. Daniel Huffman wants to know, I charge on a flat fee basis. I see the percentage AUM option, but is it possible to add an option for me to list my flat annual fee? That's an interesting question. We have not gotten that request that much. It makes total sense to kind of have a flat fee there instead of AUM, particularly on a client portfolio and not a model portfolio, which is allocation based. So thank you for that suggestion. We'll definitely prioritize it. Naveen wants to know, would you ever integrate with the right capital to be able to take the holdings data directly from there? So Naveen, that's a great idea. Would love to integrate with the right capital. It's another thing where we just need to be bumped up in the priority queue over there. So if you could ask your sales rep or your customer support person to kind of request that Koyfin integration, that would be very helpful for us. Mark Kelly wants to know, do you have a better way to download portfolios other than CSV files? Formatting of different sources is always a challenge. Goal is to be able to take an index or other ETF and create a model out of it. Would like to be able to send to Ultra Schwab. So Mark, maybe I could follow up with that workflow to just understand exactly what you want to do. So I think it's potential. Well, I'll follow up with you and figure out exactly what you want there. Naveen wants to know, what are the biggest changes, enhancements to Koyfin to expect in the next 12 months? I think that's a great question. So one of the things that we'll be working on is improvements to kind of the reporting and client portfolios and model portfolios. So those are going to be enhancements like things like contribution analysis, something that's been asked about a lot for model portfolios and client portfolios. The daily sync and making sure that that's rolled out and integrated. That'll happen over the next couple of months. The risk scoring and questionnaire. That's going to be a kind of major initiative for us to kind of centralize that workflow of being able to assess risk and send out risk questionnaires to your clients. And so those are kind of like the immediate term financial advisor workflows that we have. If there's anything else that you think is kind of pressing, definitely let us know. That's why I wanted to run the survey. So I think we have a bunch of ideas that we want to do for the later half of the year, and we need to prioritize them. So some of those that come to mind are options data. So being able to look at options data on Koyfin. Another one is going to be getting international data. So maybe thinking about getting international data for stocks. Right now it's end of day for international stocks, and we want to get live and delayed data there. And then really enhancements to the reporting functionality. So today reports live inside of model portfolios and client portfolios. And what we're going to do is really create a hub for you to really be able to access reports and be able to share reports. And lastly, kind of sharing and collaboration. That's a big part of what we want to do, to allow you to share dashboards and be able to kind of make Koyfin more of a collaborative environment for teams and advisors. So those are some of the ideas we have. We really rely on our users to give us feedback and prioritize workflows. So if there's anything that's pressing that you didn't mention in the survey, let me know. And so I think that was the last question. Eric asked if the performance is based on historical or transaction of the current holdings. We already answered that, so it's on the current holdings, and that's it. I will share the results of the poll. Let's see if we are able. Okay. So these are kind of the results of the poll because you can type in anything you want into the box. Zoom cleverly gives you this kind of word cloud. So, portfolios seem to be kind of the biggest thing. So a lot of portfolio requests here. So we'll definitely look at all the different requests that you have for how to improve portfolios, and basically aligns with what I said of a big track and a big workflow for us for next year is taking what we have today and improving it and enhancing it. And looks like there's kind of some love you two guys. And maybe you're saying I don't love, which is also okay. And then maybe something here on automated and accounts. So pretty kind of interesting word cloud of different things that you want. But we will read every one of these suggestions and prioritize them and follow up with you if there are any questions. Awesome. Well, if there's no more questions, I wanted to thank you for your time. Really appreciate you joining us and learning about the functionality. Thank you for being a user of Koyfin, for supporting us, for providing all the great feedback. And we have a lot more great things that we're going to be coming out with and building in 2026. So super excited for that. And thanks again for your support. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.